Hello and welcome to the Daily Racing Form webinar about the special Belmont and Keeneland All-Stakes Pick Four. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale, back with you. Part of my job here at Daily Racing Form is to host these handicapping sessions from time to time. Another part of my job is to host the DRF Players Podcast twice a week, and I'm viewing this handicapping session as an extension of the podcast. Who knows, maybe we'll even get it up in the podcast feed eventually, but we're really happy for all the folks joining in live. I am joined today by my usual podcast co-host. You know him, you love him. He's the people's champ. He's calling in from the planet Texas. He is Jonathon. JK, what's up this morning?
Nothing much. Just got some sausage, had some fruit, some chocolate milk for the little guy. Everything's going well in the world so far.
The breakfast of champions to start out this Saturday of Fall Stars weekend at Keeneland, and also the Saturday of this really cool Belmont-Keeneland All-Stakes Pick Four we'll be talking about in a minute. Our next guest is someone, if you're a regular podcast listener, you've heard his name mentioned. I don't know, I'd put the over-under at about 742 times, but he's never actually been a guest on the show. That changes this morning with this handicapping session. I could spend basically all the time we have today giving out accolades for this man. Here's what I want you to know for now. This is one of the horse players, incredibly influential, spent a lot of time over the course of the last, 15 or 20 years, it might even be at this point, working with the NTRA closely on getting the horse player tax reform work done. That's one thing you want to know. You also want to know that he is the author of an upcoming book called Betting with an Edge. If you like what you hear from this guest, I'm going to encourage you to get a copy of that book, which will be on sale on the DRF website in early November. As a special bonus for attending this handicapping session, you will be receiving a special email offer about a way to purchase Betting with an Edge. The guest I'm talking about, of course, is Mike Maloney. Mike, how are you this morning?
Great, Pete. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Well, let's dive right in. The first race in this Belmont-Keeneland All-Stakes Pick Four is the Champagne from Belmont. Goes as race 8, 4:13 Eastern is when this thing starts. Mike, as our guest, will give you the first crack. What are your thoughts on the Champagne?
You know, the Champagne, as per usual, Pete, is a tough race, and horse players get tired of hearing that. I get tired of hearing it, but when you take 2-year-olds and you bring them in from several different locales, and you try to stretch them out, a lot of them for the first time, it's a tough deal to sift through. And this race is like those races tend to come up where the horses that haven't been long yet, even though this is a one-turn mile, the horses that haven't been long yet tend to have the higher numbers, and the horses that have been the mile tend to have the lower numbers. So then you have to blend that together or attempt to. So, it's a hard race, but I have a couple of ideas about it.
All right, let's start off. I know you're a big believer in constructing multiple tickets when it comes to your horizontal exotic play. With that in mind, who are your A horses for the Champagne?
Okay, in Belmont 8, the Champagne I have as A's 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8. So that would be Stronger, Enticed, Good Magic, Bahamian, and Avinu Malkainu.
Malkainu, very close.
Malkainu, thank you. Not bad for a Kentucky boy. That's close. That's close enough for us. And my B horses are Honorable Treasure and Ferran Spire.
In terms of your A's, do you have any of them? I know a lot of times when you're putting together your multis, you'll see a race like this where you have a lot of A's, but there'll be a horse or two that you want to press up even more in case you're absolutely right about the way you see everything going forward. Is there a horse amongst your A's that qualifies with that idea, somebody who'd be something closer to a tepid selection if forced to give one?
Unfortunately, not in this Champagne, Pete. This is a survive and advance race for me. There's just too many moving parts in here, and there's no one that I perceive as outstanding value. So I'm just going to try to get through this leg, but it makes sense that Keeneland is probably a place that I have, more of an edge than at Belmont. Keeneland's, I'm born and bred Lexington kid. So if I don't know Keeneland, I don't know anything. So I'm going to lean on the Keeneland races a little more heavily for my strongest opinions.
That makes perfect sense. JK, how about you? Where are you in terms of we talked a little bit on the show yesterday about your A horses in here. If you want to recap that and maybe spread out the discussion a little to talk about who you might save with in this race as a B.
Yeah, so my single A horse is going to be Good Magic. We talked about that a little bit on the podcast. And I think it's for similar reasons to the idea that Mike and I, neither one of us are going to use the 11 horse Has It. Thought that horse got an easy lead on the inside last time against Good Magic on a track that we've all talked about on Travers Day that was kind of inside speed. So Has It's one that I'm going to fade. The amount of money that Good Magic took last time, we talked about that, 75 cents on the dollar. That's a lot of money at Saratoga, and there must have been a lot of things going in that horse's direction. And like we said, he was a little bit outside that day. I would expect him to run a little bit better. The two B horses I'm going to use are Avenue. Well, you said it. I can't. I should have been listening.
Avino Malkainu, come on. I gave Mike has an excuse, JK. You have no excuse. You're here. The least you can do when you're on the call is bother to listen to what the host has to say. I
usually listen to you, but sometimes I block you out. I'm joking. I'm joking. All right, and then the other B horse I'm going to use is Honorable Treasure. Funny enough, I'm going to be rooting for Stronger. Our friend Jake Ballas has the half sister Silencer to Stronger. So if he wins this race, then I'll just get Jake to give me my money back that I lost on the pick four.
We've seen that move before. Speaking of number 11, Has It, and friends of ours, our friend from Coolmore, Scott Calder, the last time he was in this house where I'm doing the broadcast from in Saratoga, he was kind enough to bring a bottle of whiskey. After hearing your thoughts on Has It, JK, I think he might ask for it back.
Scott sent a message yesterday. He wasn't real happy with me, but I think he's just mad because we played in a tournament together on DRF tournaments this week, and I beat him. So it was only $22, so he's going to need to get over it.
All right, let's move on to Keeneland, Mike Maloney's home track. We're sticking in the 2-year-old direction for the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity. This one goes at 5:10 Eastern. JK, we'll keep it with you.
Yeah, we talked about it on the show the other day, and I think I reserved the right to switch it up a little bit from what I did on Out of the Gate. If that bothers you, I apologize. Look, I think Free Drop really is probably the most likely winner. I'm going to use him as an A horse. I'm going to use Bourbon Resolution as an A horse as well. I think on the show I said I was going to use Give Me a Minute. I've actually downgraded Give Me a Minute to a B horse. Not that I don't think that he's likely. It's more of a value situation. I feel like with using Free Drop Billy and Give Me a Minute as A horses can kind of kill your equity in the bet. So I'm going to kind of take a little bit of a stand here. I thought Free Drop Billy would really excel going longer. We talked about it. He's a half to Hawk Bill who runs 1.5 mile plus races over in Europe and does it ineffectively here when you meet him and pick fives. But Free Drop Billy, I think, is going to really appreciate the extra ground. And then Bourbon Resolution we talked about, kind of that Ian Wilkes thing. I actually think you quoted Mike when we were talking about it, how it just kind of feels like he's coming into form and he's sitting on his best performance. So I think I'll use him with a little bit of value at 8-1 on the morning line.
Before I want to get back to that idea and ask Mike about that idea that he wrote about in the new book, Betting with an Edge, to see if this horse Bourbon Resolution qualifies. But before we go there, explain to some of the players who might not be as experienced with multiple exotic wagers, JK, about what you mean by giving away too much equity in the leg.
Well, essentially, your ticket's going to double in price when you go from using one horse to two, right? I mean, that's kind of basic math. And so using Free Drop Billy and Give Me a Minute, I'm going to spend so much on that other combination that if Free Drop Billy is my strong opinion and he happens to win, at the end of the day, I'm likely to feel as if I didn't bet enough on that combination. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move Give Me a Minute back to a B horse. If he wins, I'll be a little bit frustrated that I wasn't as heavy on him as I should have been, but that's my opinion. So I'm just betting my opinion, and I'm betting it with a little bit more looking for a little bit more of a direct hit more than kind of the wide net catch.
Mike, I've heard you say things along those lines before, that the perfectly written bet really is an expression of your opinion. Is how fundamental is that idea to the exotic tickets that you write? And we'll have a chance at the end of the show today to talk specifics about how these bets will be written. But how important is that concept to you?
Well, it's one of the bedrocks of horseplay, in my opinion, Pete, is you have to take a stand somewhere, is the way, a lot of players say it. But, you can't just narrow down races and string those numbers together and hope to beat a 20% take. In the long run, that's going to chew you up. So you have to have some insights and some opinions somewhere along the way. I said the Champagne was a stay alive race for me, survive and advance. And it's okay to have some of those races. Most times you're going to have some of those races in a sequence, but somewhere in that sequence, or maybe a couple times in that sequence, you need to man up and take a little stand. So that is kind of the hard part of being a horse player, is knowing when to do that, on what horse, weighing all these factors. And those are the kind of decisions that I grind over every day, but those are the kind of decisions that lead you to improving your horseplay.
All right, let's talk specifically about this race, Mike. I was going to ask you, Bourbon Resolution, who JK was including, you talk in the book about something called the stair-step pattern. What is that, and does Bourbon Resolution qualify?
Yeah, this is the stair-step pattern, first of all, is just, I would relate it to speed figures, whatever speed figures you like to use. It's a pattern where the horse will sometimes go from a 60 figure to a 70 figure to an 80 figure. This is almost always a young horse in its first 4 or 5 starts. This pattern, usually that's where you see it. It can also be in kind of a little double up pattern, or double top, some people say. So it could be like a 60, 2 70s, then moving forward to maybe pairing up 80s. So it can show itself in different ways. But Bourbon Resolution is definitely showing that pattern. He could go on to, he could do a couple of things. He could throw another 78 buyer figure that I'm looking at on my racing form here, or he could move forward and go into the mid or high 80s, just depending on, on what version of that pattern he might fall into. And I tailor that pattern to look for certain trainers that bring their 2-year-olds, their babies, along slowly. Kind of old school trainers, I call them. Well, Ian Wilkes falls into that, and I don't mean old school trainers as a negative term. I just mean it as a style of training. So Ian Wilkes learned his chops from Carl Nafsker, and Carl Nafsker was known for bringing horses like Street Sense along slowly. They were still running nice numbers, but they were constantly improving with each race. Ian Wilkes horses tend to do that. So if it's a trainer that I know tends to bring his horses along in that pattern, then I'm looking for the stair-step pattern to go. I have much more confidence when I see it with a trainer like Wilkes. Bourbon Resolution for me is a B in this race, but I like the horse. I think he's moving forward, and I think he'll give a good account of himself, in this race. But I think this is a strong addition of the futurity this year. I think, there are a couple of horses in here that are really tough horses, and I just don't think Bourbon Resolution, in my eyes, is ready to beat them today.
Who did you end up with as your A's in here?
Well, Jonathon and I are on, the very similar page. I used the 7 and the 9, Give Me a Minute and Pre-Drop Billy as my A. I have a few Bs, but I'm going to have a significant drop off here between my A's and my B's. My B's may even be more like C's in this race, because I'll run 80 to 90% of my money that I invest in this sequence through the 7 and the 9. And I do like the 9 Pre-Drop Billy a little better. I agree with Jonathon on that. And this is from personal wounds that I've suffered over the years. Dallas Stewart in big races has, and admittedly it's been in the Derby or the Oaks more than it has, than it has been in the Futurity. But I just fear Dallas Stewart in these kind of situations. And both of these horses are bred so well for a route. I think they're both just going to love stretching out. And I'm going to use Pre-Drop Billy a little more, but I'm also going to consider Give Me a Minute as an A.
I turned off my my notes that you can put in Formulator for this handicapping session. But I will say, having been in the paddock for the hopeful, my note on both the 7 and the 9 aligns exactly with what you were saying, Mike. These are both horses who just very clearly physically want more ground and should improve. They get it today, and I definitely am sympathetic to that idea of running the vast majority of money through the 7 and the 9 here. We will talk again at the end of the show about the specifics of bet construction and what that means to run 80 or 90% of your money through certain combinations when we get there. But let's do the 2 races before. And the next one we're going to discuss is the Jockey Club Gold Cup, with a big favorite here, presumably in Keen Ice. What a cool horse, aiming to run in his 3rd consecutive, I guess it would be, Breeders' Cup Classic. Horse keeps running well, puts up impressive figures. Mike, we talked about the percentage of play you were going to put through those favorites potentially in the Futurity. What are you going to do with Keen Ice in the Jockey Club Gold Cup?
I'm going to put about 60% of my play through Keen Ice, Pete. And I know he's the best horse. And the racing gods tend to give you this situation all the time. We've all seen where you clearly know who the best horse is, Keen Ice in this situation. But he's a fairly deep closer, and he just doesn't catch a lot of pace in this race. So, as handicappers, we're forced to make the decision. Obviously the 1, Diversify, is going to be loose on the lead in here. So then it turns into a little bit of a guessing game. You need to monitor the early races at Belmont to determine if there's any type of a speed bias in play. If I'm convinced that there's even a mild speed bias in play on the dirt at Belmont, then that 60% on Keen Ice could turn into a 40-40 with Diversify and Keen Ice. But I'm not a huge fan of Diversify as a horse. So here's the way I'm going to lay out the race. 60% of my money is going to go through Keen Ice. 20% each are going to go on Diversify and Rally Cry. Rally Cry, kind of an inconsistent horse, but I think on his best race, I could picture him pressing the pace of Diversify, laying a few lengths off, and then maybe just being a better horse and running by off his very best race if speed were to be holding or the pace were extremely slow. But so it's only those 3 for me, but it's mostly Keen Ice.
JK, how do you see this one?
Yeah, I was gonna stone cold A Keen Ice. I am gonna use him only as an A, but I am gonna use 1 B horse, and that's gonna be Rally Cry. I'm kind of stuck in this theme the last few weeks of pace being a little bit more in depth than we see it in the surface, and I feel like Diversify is likely to be on the lead. But if they're going too slow, if they're going slow enough for Diversify to win, then I think Rally Cry will take advantage of sitting off of him and is a better closer and finisher than Diversify, and Rally Cry will beat Diversify. If they go quick enough that a closer can win, I don't see how Keen Ice loses. So those are the only two I need. 80% of my money will go through Keen Ice. The other 20% will go through Rally Cry, and I'll hope to get on to the next one.
All right. We will, again, get to the specifics of those tickets in a little bit, but let's get to the final race in this Belmont-Keeneland All-Stakes Pick Four sequence. It's the Shadwell Turf Mile. Pretty interesting renewal of this race. JK, how are we going to get paid here?
I'm going to use 3 A horses. I'm going to use Heart to Heart. Flatlined, I've convinced myself I'm going to use him as an A horse. And then I'm also going to use, God, what's that horse's name?
If we've talked about Mike 742 times on the podcast, I think we've talked about Divisadero 743.
Yeah, so Divisadero, I've convinced myself that the mile might suit him if ridden accordingly. I love that Julian decided to stay here instead of Heart to Heart, which he's won a lot of races on. And I feel like he'll get cover here. I feel like he'll get pace. If you look through your formulator notes, if you're taking formulator notes, I bet you got a bunch of slow pace notes, slow pace on Divisadero. And I think he might actually get something to close into today. Should save ground. He's usually been wide a lot too. So I think there's a bunch of reasons why he could run well. I'm going to use those 3 as A horses, and then I'm going to use Bala Rocks as a B horse.
All right, I can't let you go without just pausing for a minute on the case for Flatlined, a horse that we did not talk about on the podcast yesterday. We did talk about a bunch of those other contenders if folks want a little bit more in-depth on them from JK. But how's Flatlined ending up here?
Yeah, I went through and I kind of slowed down and I went through all his mile and the 16th races or shorter. Gulfstream Park going 7.5, which is the weirdest distance in racing. Good race. Then the race he kind of won and kind of came out, the Fort Lauderdale mile and a 16th, good race. He didn't run so well at Keeneland here, but he kind of broke slow. It took him all the way back out of the race. I'll forgive him for that. And then he comes back and runs well, going a mile and 16th at Ellis Park. He's a big price. All things considered, if someone was like, I need to spend less money, then move him back to a B horse. I'm just interested in having him as an A horse at 20-1 in a sequence where it feels as if I'm leaning on a lot of short price horses. So I injected him as an A horse because the value is there. I wouldn't want to throw in another short. I wouldn't want to throw in like a Miss Temple City as an A horse because she's already such a short price. And I feel like you're kind of killing your value of the bet. When you're adding a 20-1 shot, it's a little bit easier to kind of flip it with it.
Well, also, if you're playing bigger denominations in a bet like the Pick Four, a horse like Flatlined, even if you're on a budget, you can have the Pick Four for 50 cents with Flatlined in there, and you're going to get paid. I mean, this horse should be all of the 20-1, I would think, if not in the win pool, definitely in this Pick Four sequence. Mike, how did you anchor this Pick Four bet? And then maybe we'll segue directly into a conversation about how you're going to bet this thing.
Okay. I just went with 6 and 10 as A's in here, Battle Rocks and Heart to Heart. I don't think there's going to be a lot of pace in here. I think, all the riders are going to basically concede the lead to Heart, and he's going to cross and clear. And then I don't see another horse that really, wants to go challenge him. So, I think they'll let him go for quite a while. And I think that's going to compromise some of the deeper closers in here. I'm using Battle Rocks because the horse has a weird PP, in my opinion. He's shown much more early speed in his last 2 races and still run very solid finals. And I think he's shown maybe a little too much speed. His previous races have a little better finish, but then I thought he was maybe a little further back than he needed to be. So I'm hoping for Lescano's ridden him a few times now, and I'm hoping that this race might set up really nicely for him where he can get comfortable. He can kind of find a middle ground between showing a little too much speed in the last couple and not quite enough early speed in the races before that, and just find a nice tracking trip, 3, 4, 5 lengths off the lead, but yet have the nice finish that he's shown in the past. I think that makes him a dangerous horse at a price. So I'm going to count on a soft pace, and those two being able to have the best chance to win. I'm going to use them as A's. Then when I move into the B's, I'm going to use a bunch of horses because I don't think this is a great edition of the Shadwell Mile, and I see holes in a lot of these horses. And when I feel that way, I want to spread out because it just brings more potential horses into the mix. So in my B's, I had 2, 3, 7, 8, 12, and 14, quite a few. But, I think you could get something goofy happen in this race if one of my top 2 choices doesn't win.
All right, let's talk a little bit about how you're going to construct these bets, Mike. Okay.
So the first thing I'll do is obviously I'll take my A's and I'll put them together. That's just so I don't do something totally stupid and get beat that way. Later in the ticket, I'll go back and I will press what I call just press tickets, where I'll take my best selections and I'll try to have them multiple times, or I'll have my best selections winning 3 legs of the 4 and I'll press that multiple times. But before I do that, I'm a believer in 2 philosophies when you're trying to construct tickets. One is to be very inclusive, and in that part of my tickets, I will try to avoid the near miss. I will use my 3 A horses in 3 legs. I'll use all my other contenders in the other as a saver. So I'll save to a single race. Then I may go back and I may take my best A's, the horses that I feel the really best about, that I think I'm getting the most value for my money with. And then I may use all A's and B's in the other 2 legs. So I'll feather in several different ideas to try to give me a chance to hit the ticket if I'm not really that right. I'll try to still be able to catch a 50 center. And if I'm really right, I want to have it multiple times and be able to score with a pick 4 that only pays, $100 or $200 for 50 cents.
A lot of this stuff Mike is talking about is covered in great detail in the book, Betting with an Edge, going to be on sale on the DRF website come early November. Again, for registering for this handicapping session, we'll also send you a special offer and an opportunity to purchase the book. You can a lot of the ideas between the development of 2-year-olds and track biases and the specifics of bet construction and philosophy. It's all in there. And I definitely think any horse player is going to be able to, no matter what your level, is going to be able to learn something from reading Mike going in great detail about this. JK, how about you from a ticket construction point of view? Unfortunately, because of the nature of this special wager, I don't believe at least I don't think it's on Ticketmaker yet. When you don't have Ticketmaker as a tool to put together a bet like this, how do you go about figuring out your combinations?
It takes a little bit more pin work, but I still use Ticketmaker. What I'll do is I'll go in and I'll find any pick 4 sequence. I'll go to Suffolk Downs and pick the early pick 4, and I'll just do it like, using the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 horse. And so for instance, in the first leg, I know that I have 1 A horse and 2 B horses. So I'll put the A as the 1 as an A horse, the 2 and the 3 as B horses. And I'll do that throughout the entire sequence. So I'll still get an accurate count of where my money should be. And then I just have to plug in my horse numbers. It's not ideal, but it works. So the way that I'm going to do it is on a $100 budget, I'll do a $4 all A ticket. So I'm single by 2 by single by 3. So I have a $4 ticket like that. For my A's with 1B, which we talked about on the show yesterday, the A, B, A, B, A, and so on, I'm going to do that for $2. And then I'm going to do the A's with 2 B's, the A, B, B, A, B, so on and so forth for $1. So I'll do my all A line for $4, my A's with 1 B's for $2, and my A's with 2 B's for $1. I'm investing a total of $98. And then you just got to cross your fingers and hope that they get home.
All right, gentlemen, that's it for all the time we have for this handicapping session. Thank you so much for getting up early, for sharing your thoughts, for hopefully giving out some winners throughout the course of this show. I want to thank JK as always. Mike, I want to thank you tremendously for doing this. I know the Keeneland meet, very busy time for you. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. Most of all, I want to thank everybody for registering, tuning in live, or catching the replay. If you joined us halfway, if you want to go back, if you need to hear again some of the things that the guys were talking about during the show, I'm pretty sure we're going to have an archive up shortly at drf.com/YouTube. Go there for this and other really cool handicapping content. If you don't already, go to iTunes, search for the DRF Players Podcast. You can subscribe. You can have the episodes appear right on your phone. We'd love to have you become a regular listener. Feel free to follow up with any questions to podcast@drf.com. We'll try to get to them in the course of the pods in the coming weeks as we continue to ramp up for the Breeders' Cup. Thanks again, everybody. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos.